the horror anthology from 1963, Twice Told Tales. Now, they're all based on the short stories from an American author from the mid-1800s, so all these stories are set in the mid-1800s, by Nathaniel Hawthorne, who was born in Salem, Massachusetts in 1804. He was a descendant of a judge who tried some of the Salem witches, apparently, if you do the research on it. But anyway, these stories really hold the test of time and are still great stories to this day. And even this movie is pretty great for being 1963. And they actually show gore, unlike the Amicus anthology horror series that started in 1964 with Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. They started a long line of horror movies, and this preceded that by 1 year. So this came out in 1963. Vincent Price, I've seen dozens of horror movies and I absolutely love Vincent Price, like everyone, of course, because of his screen presence. Just amazing conviction in all of his characters. And he really does, and he narrates and acts in all three of these short stories. So let's get into them. I'm not going to really spoil any of the short stories. I'm just going to give a brief plot summary and maybe tell you my overall thoughts and if I liked it or whatnot. I love how the skeleton hand opens up a book to tell the stories in this. It's awesome. You actually see the skeleton hands in this poster. They come into play in one of the stories and in the narration of the in between the stories. He does a voiceover narration. You don't see him sitting in a chair or something, but Vincent Price, he's done a lot of bad horror movies. He's done a lot of horror movies, period, but this is a pretty decent one. It's got the red paint kind of blood in it throughout, which kind of takes away. No, it's kind of like all the blood from that era in the 60s, but this is the same year he filmed Haunted Palace. One of my favorite films of his. If you haven't seen that Haunted Palace, that's where he basically turns into an ancestral warlock. It's insane. But on to the first story. The first one is called Dr. Heidegger's Experiment. And this is where two old guys, played by Vincent Price and some other guy, some old jolly guy, and he's turning 80, and they find out that his wife's crypt. This is back in the day when they used to bury your family members in a tomb or a crypt outside. And it floods with this water that turns out to be magical, eternal water. Now, this one, it sounds stupid when I say that, and I don't want to give the twists away. There are twists in it, and it's pretty compelling and a pretty unique story. I'll just leave it at that. It's pretty awesome, and they do this, decrepit corpse that's all dried out. Oh, they use amazing props, especially for its day, throughout this movie. Highly recommend it. On to the second story. It's called Rappaccini's Daughter. And this is where Vincent Price plays basically an old professor who loses his wife, or his wife ran out on him with his daughter. So what he ends up doing is poisoning his daughter's skin. He gives her poisonous, venomous injections where no one can touch her, so that way she doesn't run away on him. And I'll leave it at that, and I won't tell you what happens in the twist or anything, but it's a decent story, but probably the weakest out of the three. Okay, now to the final one. House of Seven Gables. I absolutely love this name, and Gables is only the meaning for the bridge or the peak of a house where the two roofs or ceiling meet. And this is supposed to be based on Nathaniel Hawthorne, his family member, one of the judges in the Salem witch trial. Apparently it was a descendant of his house, and it got passed down, and it ended up being his cousin's house. and he based it on this, and he wrote this witchcraft warlock kind of story where there's a hidden vault, and Vincent Price comes back home after 17 years to basically find this vault that contains like the deed to like properties in Maine. And apparently every guy in his family's cursed, and they always die by like the ghost that haunts the house. And so you could only imagine what ensues in this. And this is in this story, and it's probably the best one, and it's amazing. And he has a bunch of great one-liners like, "What, is a dead guy gonna stop me?" I love Vincent Price. Amazing screen presence, amazing actor. You could get lost in watching all his movies. There's like dozens and dozens from different decades to choose. And apparently, he did the film adaptation of this film in 1940, which I gotta see sometime because it's an amazing story, amazing title, and a nice little hidden gem anthology film that doesn't get talked about too much. Twice Told Tales. Absolutely loved it. Give it a B overall. This was JBM from VillainRadio. I'm out. Thanks for watching.